Pardon?
Now we can start. Mr. Ajit Roy.
Best wishes to all our friends in Lund and other places in Sweden. I will take this opportunity of Lars Ekström's presence in Calcutta to convey to you a brief analysis of the Indian situation, since we are all interested in the progress of the democratic forces in our country. So far as one can see, the situation in India is getting extremely complicated, and maybe we are heading for the most serious type of crisis that we have experienced or passed through since independence. First of all, the economic situation is becoming extremely alarming. This year's budget papers show that about 24% of the gross receipts from foreign sources are now going to repay the debt servicing charges, and it is generally considered that if a country crosses the 30% limit, then it is caught in a debt trap. Therefore, if the present trend continues, then next year or year after that, India will be caught in the same sort of debt trap as Venezuela has just got in, and Mexico, Brazil and other countries in Latin America are now passing through. Secondly, the balance of foreign trade is becoming increasingly larger in deficit. Last year, for the whole year, the gap in the foreign trade balance was only 6,600 crores. And this year, in 8 months, we have already crossed 5,000 crores mark. So the full year may lead to a total deficit of nearly 9,000 crores. Then we have already 30 million unemployed on the employment registers. So all these indicate the various dimensions of the acute economic crisis, and the present government is not, has not given any indication that it will reform or change or reorientate any of its basic economic policies. So the economic crisis in the next year or two may pull the country into the vortex of political crisis of a great magnitude. Secondly, as you all may be knowing, that we are expecting a general election for the Lok Sabha by the end of this year. Unless, of course, the Congress I government and Rajiv Gandhi makes a move for some sort of a constitutional coup and adopts some sort of measures to put off the election, not quite justifiable by canons of constitutional government, because now our constitution has been amended to make the declaration of emergency much more difficult. So unless the government is prepared to disregard constitutional niceties, it cannot have a declaration of emergency at its sweet will. Therefore, it is sometimes hinted and suggested that Rajiv Gandhi may just disregard the provisions of constitution and go in for an emergency regime of some sort in order to evade facing the verdict of the people in coming December. This is due to two basic factors. One is the economic crisis, the other is total loss of any sort of credibility and legitimacy on the part of the Congress I. It has been revealed through a series of by-elections in different parts of the country during the last 3-4 years. In most of the by-elections, including the prestigious by-election in Allahabad, Congress I lost the elections, suffered heavily. Then the recent Tamil Nadu election, which Rajiv Gandhi made a sort of a test case for his own personal vote catching capabilities. He paid more than 12 visits to the state in the course of the last 6 months. Then he had prepared the ground by having one of his trusted bureaucrats, P.C. Alexander, who was the High Commissioner for India in London. He had him brought to Tamil Nadu to act as the governor of the state and make full use of the state government's resources and machinery to popularize the Congress I. Even then, Congress I suffered a severe defeat with only about 29 or 28, only 19 seats in the state assembly election. So this was immediately followed by all sorts of revolt within the Congress I rank in various states, in Bihar, in Rajasthan, partly in Gujarat, and there are symptoms of a similar revolt now brewing in UP, the largest state, and also in Madhya Pradesh. So all these have combined to make Rajiv very shaky, because till recently all the Congress ranks were held under whip by the dictatorial and authoritarian Congress president, whether Mrs. Gandhi or Rajiv Gandhi, by the fact that Congress politicians could only expect to win their election either for the state assembly seat or for parliament seat only if they would have the blessings of the Congress I leader. But this time, for the last few years, in fact, it has been clearly seen that Rajiv Gandhi cannot provide them with any sort of assurance for getting through this election barrier. Therefore, nobody is sure to what extent the Congress I MPs, MLAs and other politicals would remain loyal to Rajiv Gandhi. And this has emboldened the opposition to pitch for the high stake of getting a majority in the next Lok Sabha election, and it is now on the cards that almost the entire opposition, stretching from Bharatiya Janata Party, the Hindu communalist fighting force at one end, to the CPM and CPI at the other end, to have some sort of a common understanding to face Rajiv Gandhi in the next elections. Most of the so-called centrist parties, that is non-communist, non-communalist parties, have combined on the platform of National Front with the Janata Dal, that is the Reform Janata Party, as its center piece, under the leadership of VP Singh. But there are still some confusions and some questions as to whether the communists would agree to some sort of indirect understanding with the Bharatiya Janata Party and to associate with the National Front if the National Front has some sort of understanding with Bharatiya Janata Party. In fact, within the CPM there is some sort of a division of opinion. One section headed by the General Secretary E.M.S. Nambudripad is taking a stiff stand that if the National Front enters into any sort of tacit understanding with BJP, then the communists should keep off from any alliance with the National Front. But there is another trend within the CPM, represented by the West Bengal Party and Jyoti Basu, who feels that some sort of indirect and tacit understanding with the Janata Party may not be avoided, and it should in fact be permitted in the interest of the basic necessity of ousting Rajiv Gandhi. And at this moment, we are witnessing the Congress of the CPI in Kolkata. It seems that there also they had a debate on this issue, and there is some amount of equivocation, not very clearly stated. But one hopes that at the end, when it comes to the brass tacks, then the communists will agree to some sort of indirect understanding with BJP through the medium of National Front, because as a realist one must accept the fact that except for certain peripheral parts of the country like West Bengal at one end and Kerala at the other end, the communists are not a recognizable force in the other parts of the country. And so far as the Hindi heartland is concerned, stretching from Bihar to Rajasthan and even Gujarat, the BJP has a presence in more particularly Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, Rajasthan and Gujarat, and it has some sort of sympathetic base among the politicos who are now organized around National Front and the Janata Dal. Therefore, though it is an admirable and lofty aim to exclude BJP from any sort of electoral alliance, but it is hardly realizable at the moment when the left is so weak. And in so far as my estimate goes, I think that it would be a mistake, it would be a gamble on the part of the left if they insist on this and thereby allow the anti-Congress votes to be divided into three segments of the communist and the right-wing Bharatiya Janata Party with some sort of its own allies like Shiv Sena in Maharashtra and Shiv Sena in Punjab, and that way one cannot be sure that Rajiv can be really defeated in the coming election. And unless Rajiv is defeated, then the country will face a bleak prospect, because with the increasing isolation of the Congress side, Rajiv Gandhi can carry on ruling the country only by basically tampering with the democratic system and only by curtailing the existing democratic rights and liberties to a considerable extent, and that will be a far greater danger to Indian democracy than the communal provocation given by the BJP. Moreover, even if one has to fight the communalists, one needs the democratic movement and democratic rights to achieve that. Therefore, democracy is the primary consideration at the moment for all Indian political forces, and particularly Indian progressive forces. Now I would like to end by drawing your attention to another dimension of the Indian situation, which to my mind is assuming a very dangerous aspect. This is the proliferation of muscle men and strong armed brigades of gangsters linked up with political forces and political parties all over the country. The first time one got an inkling of the mischief-making capacity of these private armies was in 1944, October, when Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated. Immediately afterwards, huge pogroms were organized in Delhi and some other parts of the country like Bokhara and Patna, in which thousands of innocent Sikh men and women were butchered, from their property looted and burned. All this was done by the private hooligans organized under the direct leadership of Congress-I politicians. More recently, the same thing occurred on a larger scale in the coastal parts of Andhra Pradesh, following the murder of a Congress-I MLA, who himself was a mafia don. There again, immediately after this news of the murder of the Congress MLA was broadcast, large-scale violence burst out in nearly 30 towns and cities of coastal Andhra, and hundreds of crores of millions worth of property were burned, and about 2 dozen or 3 dozen people were killed. And there are similar outbursts from time to time in different parts, from which even West Bengal is not entirely free. And it is my submission that even the left, particularly the CPM, is not taking due care of not only not fighting this phenomenon, but at least keeping clear of these private gangsters and hooligans who are making use of the protection of politicians to feather their nest. And this sometimes reminds me of the counter-revolutionary development in Indonesia in 1965. Apparently, the Communist Party of Indonesia at that time was, doing very fine. Only a few months earlier, they observed the 45th anniversary of the foundation of the party on a big scale, and the whole of Indonesia celebrated this anniversary by flying red flags all over the country and holding all sorts of carnival. But when in October the counter-revolution struck, the party was paralyzed, and they paid by the death of nearly 1 million in the course of next 1 year, and the party has not recovered from the blow after 24 years so far. The situation in India has, to my mind, some grim similarities with the situation in Indonesia in the middle 60s, in the sense that the old ruling class has lost its legitimacy and credibility, but there is no alternative emerging from the other end of the spectrum to take over. In the meantime, all sorts of adventurists are coming into the picture and trying their hands, and the lefts do not realize, the communist parties do not realize the great stake in the situation. They also from time to time take steps which are not justifiable and which reveals a certain lack of
Bra!
Hallå, ja.
Hallå. Det är jag som fotograferar.
Maria kommer till oss här och pappa ska ta ett kort på oss.
Du får bada på mig också.
Ja, visst. Ska du borta också, Mattias?
Kom du.
Du också sitta där och samma.
Hej då.
Ska du komma här och ska vi göra det här då?
Jo.
Har du gjort detta? Har du sett Marie?
Ja, ja.
Jag missar inte alla som kan det.
Kan du?
Det är i taket där. Så, vi är på.
Så, ska jag lägga den så. Och tar du en till en annan. Så vrider du.
Ja. Okej.
Jo, det har du. Jag ska sitta en gång till.
Och så vrider du.
Kom,
Och så vrider du. Inte lätt.
Jo, det är lätt.
Pappa lätt att starta Maria.
Då kommer det.
Det är en bra bok.
Marie. Denna. Nu är det. Nu syns inte jag snart, va?
Jo då.
Ja.
Är det klockan?
Fågel.
Fågel. Ja, det hörde jag lätt en gång, ja. Parti.
Första. Det finns många bondgårdar i världen, men ingen är som vår gård. Vår gård är stor, så stor att den har plats åt alla. Och vår gård är liten, så liten att den får plats även för det minsta lilla hjärta. Vår gård tillhör inte någon, på samma sätt som solen och luften inte tillhör någon. Vår gård tillhör alla, på samma sätt som världen tillhör oss alla.
Vad fint.
Ja, vad fint, ja. Sen började då, de 3 små vännernas högsta önskan var att en gång få stanna upp till midnatt. De skulle ha gjort det för länge sedan, om inte fanns hade varit så rädd för att försovas nästa morgon. För en tupp som försover sig blir utskrattad till och med av hönorna. Kan ni se var tuppen är någonstans? Det är tuppen, ja, och hönorna. Ser du Marie vad hönorna är? Och Frans, vem är Frans? En av Frans där nere.
Är det en ny bok som har fått? Nej,
Det är fan.
Annars tror jag att det är det. Ser man inte på nästa sida. Men en dag fick tjocka Valdemar en bra idé. Och som så ofta fick han den när han åt. Vet ni vad? Det vi behöver, smackade han högt, en väckarklocka. Och var ska vi få den ifrån? Avbröt Frans honom. Den lånade oss bonden, flinade musen Johnny, som var hemmastad i bondens hus. Medan Frans och Valdemar stod på vakt, smet Johnny in i huset och slängde ut väckarklockan genom sängkammarfönstret. Och vännerna jublade för den glädje man känner i förväg är alltid störst. De kunde knappast vänta tills solen hade gått ner och stjärnhimlen började gnistra. När tjocka Valdemar såg en stjärna falla fick han önska sig något, för det brukar man få. då vill jag att vi går in, sa han och kliade sig. Här är så mycket mygg. Det är precis som i Kolkata, det var mycket mygg. Och det berättar så. Och tant Mu sov så hårt, naturligt, kossan där, att hon inte ens vaknade när de 3 vännerna hoppade rep med hennes svans. Jag vet inte, hoppade rep med hennes svans.
Men det sitter ju fast.
Ja visst, jag läste, det är väldigt fint. Farbror Jon, som var en riktig mähä, målade de mustascher på. Och Kristoffer och Karolina, som tyckte så mycket om varandra, band ihop svansknararna på. Man behöver inte upp svansknararna där. När månen tittade in genom takfönstret var det dags att visa film. De spelade de 3 musketörerna på bondgården. Och föreställningen var underbar ända tills Leo dök upp.
Kan du komma med?
Med ett jättesprång räddade sig musen Johnny in i höet. Medan Frans och Valdemar gemensamt jagade fienden på flykten.
Hej.
Min födelsedag idag.
Ja. Grattis.
Ja, vi har hyllat honom.
Ja.
Han har fått lakan så han ska kunna ligga skönt i fortsättningen. Och sällsamheter i Lund av Bertil Nils Palmborg.
Mm.
Choklad inte att förglömma.
Nej. Det är riktigt.
Och Bobba har gjort en fin gräddtårta med kiwi på. Och det var både äppelmos och det var hallonsylt på, tror jag. Och vispgrädde. Och så bjöds det på starkvaror. Så mamma Gerd ska förmodligen köra bilen hem nu.
Jaha, och det är långfredag idag.
Ja, det är det också, ja.
Ovanligt tidig påsk.
Och imorgon ska ni är välkomna till Neptunus klockan 16. Och då kommer även Revingborna. Och då ska det serveras julmat, det ska serveras lutfisk. Och rökbröd. Det ska bli verkligen godis.
Senare julmiddag.
Ja.
Det är för sena julen. Ni var inte här på jul, så vi rasslade med kornas kedjor, skramlade med soptunnorna, knarrade dörrarna och buade och fnissade. Trappa upp och trappa ner.
Nu mamma kan spela piano.
Det kan jag göra. Det var länge sedan.
Jag ska spela sin paradvis.
Jag spelade jag kan.
Ja, gör det som Moder sa.
Mattias,
Jag
känner.
vet en gång när vi skulle spela så
Jättetomma.
Det är väl tyst.
så blev det tyst. Ja. Men jag har glömt. Påsk, sjunga min guldefjul. Kom Mattias, för du spela med. Kom. Det var en kyckling som efter ja, men du kan sjunga. Kom. sjunga Blinka lilla. Blinka lilla stjärna, hur jag undrar var du är. När man lockar du min stil, liten fria fantasi. Blinka lilla stjärna där, hur jag undrar var du är. Den kunde ni? Ja, men det var väl roligt att jag kom med och fick spela piano. Vad ska man nu spela?